Let's bring in Doug Flynn. He's the co-founder at Flynn Zito. So sometimes context matters on numbers, or I guess all the time context matters. But what do you think the broader context is here, one administration versus the other, when it comes to job growth, especially in manufacturing?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody needs to adjust for COVID. I think they want to adjust for COVID. You can't shut down the economy. The U.S. lost 22 million jobs in 2020, and 3/4 of those were back by like August of 21. So, do they blame Trump and then give, Biden-Harris credit for that? I mean, I would just negate the two of those and talk about outside of COVID, what did you really create? Of course, they're going to spin it. That's what they need to do. And it's a great starting point for them on everything they do. If you're starting in a closed up economy with all those jobs, they couldn't even go to work if they wanted to, then those numbers are going to look good. I think you just have to adjust them. And things are adjusted all the time. Everybody adjusts things. So we need to adjust for that.
Are you surprised at how strong the economy is, particularly the manufacturing economy, given all, and I'm sure you and I talked about it. I know I talked to everybody about it early in the Trump administration, how much backlash the plan for tariffs received in the financial community. President Biden kept them. Trump put them in place, and we still have this type of growth in the economy. Is it surprising now that we look back?
I think everyone was surprised at how well the U.S. did in GDP. I think economists underestimated it. I think that's pretty consistent. Even the economists now in the Fed who are looking at inflation and what to do with interest rates underestimated the growth of the economy. So yeah, the U.S. is really resilient, and it's a great place. It might be the best of the worst house, the best house on the worst block, but it's still the best one. So yeah, we keep plugging along, and so there's more to it. I think all those policies do help. I think they're both for manufacturing, if you will. I think neither of them want to destroy manufacturing. So those are good things. I think they all want to grow the economy. They might want to do it slightly differently, but they want to grow the economy. Nobody wants to not do that.
Yeah, because it's tough to get elected or reelected if you don't do that. That's the bottom line, right? Let's talk about tonight a little bit, because President Trump, for the third time, will accept the nomination of his party. Of course, it's different given the assassination attempt, but it might not be different in terms of his economic approach. Or maybe it will be. We'll see. That's Milwaukee, outside the Fiserv Forum where the convention is being held. It'll be an interesting night. All right, let's talk about his economic plans. The Financial Times, we can put it up on the screen, went into it. Trump and Vance, and what the questions are in terms of the economy, whether it's trade, trade tensions, tax cuts, who's for them, who's against. I think if Trump's for them, whatever Vance thinks probably won't matter. Fresh scrutiny of big business. That's interesting. And also deregulation. We talked about trade already, but what about that question of tax cuts? Again, Trump's populist message is not really that populist when it comes to big corporations. He wants them to pay lower taxes. He wants individuals, even rich or wealthy individuals, pay lower taxes.
Yeah, their concept is that, if you look at total revenue to the U.S. government, lowering tax rates did not hurt revenue to the U.S. government. As always, this country does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. So if you lower taxes, I've been doing this long enough to know when tax rates, capital gains rates are too high, people stop moving money around. They just do. And straight line math is, well, if we just, raise taxes, we'll get more revenue off of the same money movement. Well, the fact is you don't. When you raise taxes, people do less. And so, there's a line, of course, they can't be too low or too high. But what this proves is that you can lower taxes and keep enough activity going where the federal government makes even more money than it did with lower tax rates. The problem isn't that. It's they all spend too much on both sides. They just spend on whatever they want to spend on.
That's true. But this point about scrutinizing big business, we've heard that, and we heard it from Vance last night, that they're for the little guy. Again, Trump hasn't really he's tried to play both sides of it, if anything. But I wouldn't say Trump's against big business by any stretch. No. If you just look at his policy, would you?
No, I mean, part of the Trump trade that you've seen is with the movement is that there's deregulation. And so smaller companies can do better in a deregulated environment. And it doesn't mean like no regulations. It just means that maybe don't make it so difficult for people to do things is what that is. So that kind of moves things along. So there's that on bigger business. I think, nobody wants a monopoly. Nobody wants them cornering everything. I think nobody wants that. But as far as lower regulation, that can make companies do a little bit better, make it easier and grow. So that's the one side. And then the other side, has been fighting a lot of the mergers. Perhaps some of that changes, mergers and acquisitions. They both like and don't like different things. Right. But, it's just who's going to be in charge and how aggressive are they going to be at tamping down deals that's what remains to be seen there.
Always good, Doug. Thank you, my friend. Doug Flynn there live with us on all the news before.